Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmony of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea.
What I would like to say is take a moment just to reflect when we talk about Dr. Martin Luther King and why and what we do when we celebrate that.
As I look out over this room, I get reminded of certain things about this event. Those of you who've been with us before, you know that this is just a part of San Antonio, the fabric of San Antonio around the King holiday.
But as family, let's give each other the tough love to know that we've got work to do. And if you see me carrying a boulder, if I see you trying to push one, if we see ourselves doing that, an ally doesn't stand by. You roll up your sleeves, mine are gold and black for the alphas. You roll up your sleeves and you get there with them. Otherwise, we'll always be waiting to see the mountaintop. Thank you.
It is a token of appreciation for your outstanding inspirational speech. Okay, and again, we want to wish you and your family continued success and blessings as you go forward. Okay.
There are forces that want to take us back to another place. We don't want to go back. We want to go forward.
I am Dr. Ben Clark, your Master of Ceremony today. So we want to welcome everyone that's here today and thank you for this opportunity to come out and as we celebrate this opportunity with our scholarship, identifying our young men and women who we find that we realize it's so important to have organizations and individuals behind them. We thank you for this opportunity, that your contribution will definitely make a big difference in our future. So what we would like to do before I get into the actual, we have the program before you, and we're pretty much going to be following that as it's written there. What I would like to say is take a moment just to reflect when we talk about Dr. Martin Luther King and why and what we do when we celebrate that. We think about the legacy in which he laid out. And oftentimes his quotes are incredible, and doing the research prior to coming here as your MC, is oftentimes it's so, it kind of lifts you up. And I want to encourage you, if you haven't, Google and find some of Dr. Martin Luther King messages, it would grab you and it would bring you to a place of reflecting where you are. And I would like to recite one here before you right now. It says, the life most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? How appropriate when we think about supporting our kids. It said, if you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, walk. And if you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving. And that's all about the movement. That's the commitment that we make to one another. And here with the Alpha Foundation, our scholarship program is directed to ensure that our young people are moving forward in their future. So that's kind of what I want to set the stage. This is why we are here, the purpose, the fundraiser. So in that, I would like to take a moment before we get into the actual meat of the program, is to identify some of our distinguished guests. And so, as you know, it's an election year, so we have folks who we really want to appreciate. But I want to take a moment and introduce, identify the Honorable Nias Mihalis. She's a candidate for a Bexar County Judge. Honorable Peter. Honorable P. C. Cobb. He's a candidate also for the Bexar County Judge position. The Honorable Stephanie Boyd, Judge 187 District Court. We want to recognize Joe Gonzalez. He's a Bexar County District Attorney. Mary Angie Garcia, who is a District Court, Bexar County. The Honorable Yolanda Huff, Judge County Court, Law 14. The Honorable Helen Stoll, Judge County Court, Law 1. Magistrate Judge William Shaw, candidate for the 436th District Court. Christina Escalona, candidate for the 186th District Court. Christine Pierpato, candidate for the 227th District Court. Brandon Jackson, candidate for the County Court of Law 6. One of our own, Brother William Johnson, Civil Service Commission, Bexar County Sheriff. I'm sorry. In a private organization, we have Brother Darrell Brown, 18th Director of Texas Coalition of Alpha Chapter. And last, we have Andrea McKnight, Vice President of Human Resource for Frost Bank. At this moment, we're going to take a pause and recognize our great organization for the Steve Militant. Okay. Brother Harris, who's going to come forward and with open remarks as we go forward. Brother Harris.
Good morning, all. Good morning. After 2020 and beyond, wearing these things, masks, I had a car accident, not only to tore my leg off. It is good to see everyone here. Amen? Amen. Most of you have been supporters of ours for decades, and it is good to see you back. This year I was asked and given the honor and challenge of trying to be the planner for this event. And I'm grateful for the challenge, as Brother Clark laid out, that ability to keep moving. Service. It really hit home from the day I got the call. As I look out over this room, I get reminded of certain things about this event. Those of you who've been with us before, you know that this is just a part of San Antonio, the fabric of San Antonio around the King holiday. We know what the march, that is the pride of the East Side, is here in this event. This specific breakfast has its origin in the administration of former Mayor Henry Cisneros. And it has been repeated generally annually since then, this being the 33rd year. Somewhere along the pipe, Delta Rho Lambda, the initial chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha, picked it up as a means of honoring the life, legacy, and works of our dear brother, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. I believe it will always be a part of the fabric of our fair city going forward, and Delta Rho Lambda, Alpha Phi Alpha collectively will always hope to maintain that role. I want to particularly add and recognize a couple of folks my ex-boss, when I walked into the district attorney's office in 2002, the Honorable Ina Minhares. She schooled me way back then. And when I wasn't getting schooled by her in the office, I occasionally had to step into a court in front of the Honorable Judge Sakai and got re-schooled then. That means Ina didn't school me up all enough. I want to welcome you all here after the postponement from January and just follow up with the tone that Brother Clark said. Monday will be the 44th anniversary of our Lord calling Dr. King home from that weekend in Memphis, Tennessee. Often when it comes to remembering his introduction into this life and then his homegoing, it gives me reason to go back and reflect and to look at some of his writings and some of his lessons. Compare what he led us through then and what we see now. One of the things I learned was in that era, as you may well remember, Dr. King's introduction into our nation started with the Montgomery bus boycott in 1956, that year-long battle for basic human decency and public transportation. Victory was finally achieved in December of 1956. But as you looked out at that plan, imagine planning that, to get an entire community to carpool together, to work together, to strive together. And look at where we are today. In this state, we know that Senate Bill 1, if you check the results of the early voting session, up to 18,000 ballots disregarded in our state of Texas. They fought to get the right to vote, and we are apparently in retrograde. One of the things as a young student I learned, Dr. King introduced these terms, interposition and nullification. I wondered, what? Interposition. When a state government tries to interpose its sovereignty between the citizens and the federal government. Nullification, when that same state entity attempts to nullify federal protections of its citizens. That's what they dealt with in 1957. And here we are in 2022. One of the things you learned over the torturous, challenging times of the Montgomery bus boycott, how do you keep the people involved? And if you read, there's an anecdote that is attributed to Dr. King, who was then pastor of the, was it Dexter Avenue Church, Baptist Church in Montgomery? He had an elder parishioner, an elder member of the church. She's known as Mother Pollard, 72 years old, who made it a point of still avoiding the bus and walking to work every day. Dr. King, who was concerned about his members, said, Mother Pollard, it would be okay. You can take the bus for your health. We don't want you to get worn out. And she looked at him. Stories around the time say that she was always a comfort and an inspiration to a young minister. She always prayed for him. And she looked at him on a particular day. Don't know, it's the research and literature is a little cloudy as the wind. But she said, Pastor, my feet is tired, but my soul is resting. So when we think about where we are with Senate Bill 1 and its aftermath and how we deal with it going forward and all of those struggles that we have to continue to fight, our soul has to be rested so we can continue the fight. Over the course of this morning, we hope to give you several more touchstones of that time so that we can all find strength and inspiration going forward. We are thankful that you are here with us, and I ask our chapter chaplain, Brother Richard Thompson, to come up and give us our invocation and blessing of the meal. Thank you.
I remember once I was a good friend of mine had to at a function, and he called to the dais to speak. He said this. He says, "I only got a minute, 60 seconds in it." He said, "I didn't pick it." He said, "I didn't even choose it. It was forced upon me, but I got to use it. I must give an account if I abuse it." You know, it's just a tiny little minute, but there's an eternity wrapped up in it. That's our life, folks. It does my heart great pleasure to be before you this morning. I'm a Baptist, you know, so I normally come in and say, "Well, this is my last point." But I won't say that this morning. It is, to our distinguished guests, Ms. Laura Coates, city leaders, the Divine Nine, the great men of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, all gathered here today, this morning, to help us celebrate our beloved brother and the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in our annual fundraising prayer practice. If you would, please, bow your heads with me. I'm not going to ask you to stand, so bow your heads with me. Dear wise and loving Father, what a wonderful day that you have made. We rejoice and we are glad in it. We thank you for your abundant blessings, generous grace, and unlimited love for one another. Thank you for unconditionally loving us and giving us strength to love you, ourselves, and our neighbors. Heavenly Father, I come to you this day to invoke your blessings upon this gathering. Let this breakfast be filled with your presence and your love. I pray for all together here today for the occasion, and when we have completed our agenda, that we will be better than when we first entered. Grant us more wisdom, a sense of understanding each other's more, and the courage to stand against injustice everywhere. Now, Father, I ask your divine blessings upon the food that have been prepared for this day. Let it provide us necessary nourishment to fill our bodies, thus giving us the strength we need to go forth and give your praise. Bless all that will partake, those that prepare and those who serve. All this, Lord, we give you praise. Amen, Lord. It is in the most blessed name of Jesus I pray. Amen.
Amen. Moment for your indulgence as we prepare to have the praise team from the mighty Sea Rock come forward. We also have another guest that needs to be recognized. For the bar card holders that are here, may I introduce the only president of the State Bar of Texas, my dear friend and mentor, Miss Lisa Tatum. the top of the page, you'll notice the scan code, the barcode. It is for a copy of Ms. Coates' New York Times best-selling book, Just Pursuit. If you scan it, it takes you to a site. We have them available for sale. It works. Hint, hint. Also, I would also be remiss, one of our foundational programs as Men of Alpha is voteless people is a hopeless people. If anyone is not certain of your current voter registration status, the scan code below that will take you to a site with the Texas Secretary of State. You can check your status. If you are non-registered, where is Brother Armand? He is the head of our Voteless People is a Hopeless People thing. We will have materials to help you get registered going into the general. If he's got hard copies, give us an email address. We'll send it to you to give to somebody else. Take the program with you and use it that way. Thank you much, and please enjoy your breakfast.
That's Chancellor to come in and give a rendition tribute to Dr. Martin Luther King.
Good morning. I'm Philip Parker, the chapter president of Dr. Lambda. I have a few guests this morning I'd like to recognize. The ladies of Alpha Kappa Alpha. In the room, stand up, please. Alpha Kappa Alpha. And those men of Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity are in the room, the Kappa Alpha Psi. Delta Sigma Theta. And the ladies are Sigma Gamma Rho. And the men of Phi Beta Sigma are in the room. Phi Beta Sigma. And of course, those ladies of Zeta Phi Beta. Are the men of Omega Psi Phi in the room. And the men of Iota Phi Theta are in the room. Thank you.
This time we'd like to move on with the program. As mentioned previously, the young minister from Montgomery, Alabama was introduced to the nation with the Montgomery bus boycott and that victory in 1956. The victory was cemented on December 20th when the Supreme Court declined to hear the last appeal of the Montgomery founding fathers. Now, the success in that effort inspired a much larger initiative within leadership of the civil rights movement. The initiative was to address the civil rights struggle that was happening throughout the South, beyond Alabama. Leadership understood that the struggle would have to have two primary axes of attack: voting power and mass direct action programs. They understood that to increase the Negro's voting power, there would have to be an extensive effort to increase black voter registration across the South. But until the Negro was voting consistently on a large scale, then you had to have the supporting axis of attack, large-scale mass action. That's where that interposition and nullification came in at state level. In February of 1957, this group of leaders, then known as the Southern Leadership Conference, held a meeting in New Orleans. At the conclusion of this New Orleans meeting, Dr. King was appointed the initial chair of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and they announced plans for a prayer pilgrimage to Washington, D.C. if, and I quote, if President Eisenhower continues to refuse to speak out in support of desegregation in the South. Leadership selected May 17th, 1954, the third anniversary of the Supreme Court decision in Brown v. Board of Education as the date for the prayer. The prayer pilgrimage had 5 objectives: to demonstrate black unity, to provide an opportunity for Northerners to demonstrate their support for the civil rights struggle, because we are all in this together. To protest ongoing legal attacks on the NAACP within the southern states. To protest violence in the South. As an aside, I know it was just within the past month that the Congress finally passed an anti-lynching bill here in 2022. The fifth and final objective was to urge the passage of federal civil rights legislation that would empower the Justice Department to file lawsuits against discriminatory registration and voting practices anywhere in the South. And yet today we have Senate Bill 51 in the Lone Star State. This inaugural event of the organization that today we know as the Southern Christian Leadership Conference brought together virtually all of the black leadership of the civil rights movement, from Bayard Rustin, Ella Baker, Stanley Levinson, A. Philip Randolph, Roy Wilkins in the NAACP, Dr. King and the soon-to-be SCLC, along with a host of prominent civil rights supporters, including Adam Clayton Powell Jr., the Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth, gospel singer Mahalia Jackson, and Harry Belafonte. Out of all this number, the young minister from Montgomery spoke last, and yet he received the loudest ovation. His remarks, he focused his text to demand action by the federal government to protect blacks' right to vote in the South, receiving wide praise. His call for the right to vote included strong criticism of both major political parties, the Congress and President Eisenhower. Quote, the executive branch of government is all too silent and apathetic. His peroration, give us the ballot, became the headline that wrote itself in coverage of the event. Coming in the aftermath of the victory in the Montgomery bus boycott, the black media of the day, and Ebony Magazine in particular, proclaimed and heralded Dr. King as the #1 leader of Negro men. We give you our brother, Lester Sampson.
Distinguished platform associates, fellow Americans. 3 years ago, the Supreme Court of this nation rendered in simple, eloquent, and unequivocal language a decision which will be forever stenciled upon the mental sheets of succeeding generations. For all men of goodwill, this May 17th decision came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of human captivity. It came as a great big and light of hope for millions of disinherited people throughout the world who dared only to dream of freedom. Unfortunately, this noble and sublime decision did not come without opposition. This opposition has risen to ominous proportions. Many states have risen up in open defiance. The legislative halls of the South are filled with such words as interposition and nullification. But even more, all types of conniving methods have still come about to prevent Negroes from becoming registered voters. The denial of this sacred right is a tragic betrayal of the highest mandates of our democratic tradition. And therefore, our most urgent request to the President of the United States and to every member of Congress is to give us the right to vote. Give us the ballot, and we will no longer worry the federal government for our human rights. Give us the ballot, and we will no longer have to plead to the federal government for passage of anti-lynching laws. We will, by the power of our own vote, write the laws into the statute books of the South and bring an end to the dastardly acts of the little perpetrators of violence. Give us the ballot, and we will transform the salient misdeeds of bloodthirsty mobs into the valiant good deeds of orderly citizens. Give us the ballot, and we will fill our legislative halls with men of goodwill and send to the sacred halls of Congress men who will not sign the Southern Manifesto because of their devotion to the Manifesto of Justice. Give us the ballot, and we will place benches of judges on the South who will do justly and love mercy. Give us the ballot, and we will place governors in our southern states who have not just felt the tang of human, but the glow of the divine. Give us the ballot, and we will quietly and non-violently, without rancor or bitterness, implement the Supreme Court decision of May 17, 1954. In this juncture of our nation's history, it is urgent that we have dedicated and courageous leadership if we are to address the problems ahead and make racial justice a reality. This leadership must be fourfold. The dearth of positive leadership from the federal government cannot be contained to one particular political party. Both political parties have betrayed the cause of justice. The Democratic Party has betrayed it by capitulating to the prejudices and the non-democratic ways of the Southern Dixiecrats. The Republicans have betrayed it by capitulating to the blatant hypocrisy of right-wing Northerners. These men are often filled with a high blood pressure of words, but an anemia of deeds. I cannot close without often mentioning the urgent need for courageous and intelligent leadership for our Negro community. We must meet violence with peace. We must meet physical force with soul force. For there is something in the universe that justifies James Russell Lowell to say, truth forever on the scaffold, wrong forever on the throne. Yet that scaffold sways the future, but behind the dim unknown stands God within the shadow, keeping watch above his own. I say to you this afternoon, keep moving. Don't let nothing slow you down. Move on with honor and dignity and respectability. This may come with some sacrifices. It may come with the loss of life. But if the loss of life is what's required to keep your children from inheriting a lifetime of physiological damage, then nothing can be more Christian. Keep moving today. Move on amidst every struggle. Move on amidst every opposition. And if we do this with dignity, when the history books are written, the historians will look back upon this day and say there lived a great people, of people with fleecy locks and a black complexion, but of people who injected new meaning into the veins of civilization, of people who stood up with dignity and honor and saved the Western civilization at the darkest hour, of people who brought new meaning of dimension and integrity to the love of our civilization. When we do this, the morning stars will sing together and the sons of God will shout for joy.
Well, we got a quick schedule change here. We actually want to have a musical selection. So we want to have our brother Reverend to introduce our guest speaker.
Protect
church in short order now. It is a distinct honor and privilege to introduce our dynamic guest speaker today. Her name is Miss Laura Coates. You have her bio in front of you, so I want to insult you by reading it word for word. Plus, in church world, the room is hot, so you want to get the speaker up real quick. Amen, amen, amen. I ain't gonna kill the room. She is a senior legal analyst on CNN. She has worked in the government as well as on the ground. She supervised elections and ensured voting rights. We used to say it in Memphis this way: she didn't just talk about it, she's been about it. Her passion for people and for what is right led her to write a book about rights. It is You Have a Right, a constitutional guide to policing the police. You can hear her daily on her radio show. I believe it's on Sirius XM, the Polish channel, where she talks about politics and law and life and everything in between. She's a somebody, y'all. If you look at her bio, you'll see that she graduated from Princeton University, the Minnesota School of Law, and now she is teaching at George Washington University. If I could just quote the famous rapper Tay Money, she understood the assignment. So without further ado, Miss Laura Coates, come on, put your hands together.
Thank you so much. Wow, I wore your colors, Alpha. Jewelry and all, because I understood the assignment. That is true. That is true. Tell you, I haven't slept a wink since Thursday. But whenever I feel tired, do you know what I think to myself? I've got no right to feel tired. Because I'm 41 years old, and I got 2 more years of life than the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who died at the age of 39. What have I done with those extra 2 years? What could he have done with the time had he had 2 cycles of 365 days? We're still talking about 1 hour of a speech from his life. Can you imagine if you were to be alive to dream in motion? So, with that wonderful choir, and 2 cups of coffee, and 4-inch heels, I am refreshed. I won't do a disservice. If you've heard me on the radio, you know that I desperately try and want to sing, but I just can't. I'm horrible. Like, I have to apologize to babies. I'm so bad. And my kids were like, "It's okay, we'll go to sleep." Lullabies are good. Thanks, Mom. We're good. We're good. Thank you. So I'm just going to channel the Yolanda Adams song I love, which is "Sight Beyond What I See." You know what's best for me. Prepare my mind, prepare my heart for whatever comes, because I'm going to be ready. And I'm so glad and ready to be with all of you all today, and I thank you so much for allowing me. And I think somebody thought I was much taller with this beautiful podium. I assure you, on television, I'm always saying I have a full body, but they always keep me in the square, so I'll stay right here. You know, it occurs to me when we're talking, obviously, about what we're marking as an anniversary, the commemoration of the anniversary. All those words don't quite feel right when we're talking about the assassination of somebody like the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. But it's what he was doing that I find such an analogy of where we are today. Remember when he was in Memphis, what was he there for? In part to help the sanitation workers, right? As part of the Poor People's Campaign. Because he understood that there was dignity in all work. And how evergreen is that concept? Over the last several years, we've been talking about what are they called? Essential workers. Having to be reminded to value, to honor, to regard with dignity those who are essential to a civilized society that has agreed to a social contract that we're all equal in theory and one day in practice. And yet, he was fighting at the time to give dignity to people who had the wherewithal and the responsibility to clean up the mess that other people made. And they were shamed because they knew the mess you had created. They knew that what they were collecting were the things you chose not to value, tried to discard, and he was protesting in there in town because 2 sanitation workers were crushed within an inferior garbage disposal truck that had malfunctioned, and it always did, in the rain. And they were crushed in the performance of trying to clean up what others had discarded and devalued, and had the audacity to tell them they were not enough. And I find an analogy in where we are today, where so often we are told, particularly as Black and brown voters, that we are essential. We are regarded in part as a monolith, although we know that there is an indignity in that assumption. We are told that we've collected all the things we value. We've discarded as a society the things we do not honor and cherish. And then come election, we'd like you to clean up the mess and hope you're not crushed under the weight of what you really know. Because when it comes to politics, when it rains, things start to malfunction. When suddenly the skies are not as clear, and the horizon far more distant, and the prospect of hard work and the dignity of following through to stay the course along the proverbial route. Suddenly, when it rains, it pours, and we find ourselves crushed under the weight of expectation that people will have dignity and see dignity, and what we, as essential members of society, are called to do. You know, I found myself, when I was in the voting rights section at the Civil Rights Division, I can't tell you what an honor it was to be there. An absolute dignity, and just a moment of elation to hear my little stiletto heels clicking down the marble hallway. I tripped twice, but no one saw, so it was okay. I didn't fall out. I kind of just lost my footing for a second, but if you knew me, it's pretty typical. Occasionally I teeter, but my spine stays straight. And as I was clicking by and getting ready to go into the interview room, and it was during the Bush administration, and there I sat, looking as young as I do right now. Because, but I will tell you, black men not crack, it does chafe. So young people moisturize. And I've told San Antonio this is not quite hot yet, so sunscreen too. And I'm sitting in the interview that I remember he all of a sudden began to conduct in Spanish. And I thought, ooh, did I speak Spanish on my resume? I did put that. And they had the entirety of half the interview in Spanish. And they began to speak English to me when they asked me what I thought was the biggest shortcoming of the Department of Justice. And I said, well, of course we as a society speak about everyone being equal and that people have the presumption of innocence and we welcome people back into our society after they have completed a sentence, but by no coincidence, we don't allow them to fully engage in the democratic process. And one of our biggest flaws is not having voting rights for those who are formerly incarcerated. And frankly, if given the chance, I would lead that team, sir. And they said, this is going to be in English from here on out. I have to ask you, do you know that's not what we do? And I said, oh, I know, that's why I'm here. He said, but are you going to follow the law? We don't follow that. And I said, well, as we know, you may have heard of this man named Thurgood Marshall. And he said, do what's right and the law will catch up. So I'm here to do what's right. I said, well, I want you to know I'm not going to pretend to conform to what you believe should happen, because I think it's more important I come as my entire self. And if you'd like to hire Laura Gail Coates, this is what Laura Gail Coates believes in. If you don't, I'm sure there are a number of people on USA Jobs happy to tell you and parrot back exactly what you want to hear. And he smiled. And he said, I think I'm going to like you. I said, give it time. It's cute now. But wait till I told you that I'm actually serious. And I think back to the moments of a Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, who had stood in the same room that I was now being interviewed. And that now infamous picture with LBJ, where well, you know LBJ. We're in Texas after all, right? Right? And there's a picture of him with his face, I've got on blush, I'm not going to throw it all. But he's got this thing and he's like this, and King is next to him like the ever-present watchful person to go, I told you what I was going to bring into the room, did I not? And that realization of knowing that what you will ask for and demand will not be popular, but yet it is told it is the expectation of a civilized democracy. That one person, one vote is supposed to mean something. But make no mistake, and none of you here are naive to the notion, that it wasn't enough and it does not remain enough to just know what the rules are. You must understand the nuance and caveats that derail the process. Because that's where the powerful maintain their powerful states, and they exploit those who have not navigated it. And for me, my personal calling has always been in my mind to be able to synthesize information and hopefully make it accessible, because it is one big wizard behind a curtain in the land of Oz that tells you the law cannot be explained to you. That, oh no, this political conversation, it's above you. This is a highbrow concept. No, let me try to break it down later. That is part of the way of telling you, this is not for you. This is not what you're supposed to know about. We've discarded the rules that say equality for all, and we've saved the nuance for ourselves and given you the indignity of trying to dispose of the mess we've made and crushing you under the weight of it. And that's where we must be in terms of understanding the complexity of the nuance and realizing how simple it really is. That democracy is not just in the voting, it's actually in the counting. Think about sports. I'm sure something about football's big here, right? Although I put my son in flag football and I prayed and I said, Lord, I'm only 5'3". Please don't make me come down the stands and beat up someone else's kid for being happy myself. It's not a good look because I'll have to go before the judge and pretend like I didn't know the assault and battery laws. Really, Your Honor? You mean if I were to harm the child? Wow. Well, see, I'm not barred in Texas. Is that it? Oh, okay. Fortunately, my son favored basketball. It hasn't stopped the urge, though, because somebody fouled him last week, and I was like, let me talk to your mom real quick. Just real quick. I just want to have a chit-chat with her. It's going to be pleasant. Just give me an hour or two in the parking lot. We'll have a whole thing. It's fine. But then she came out, and she was 6 feet tall. And I was like, great foul. Your son But I tell you, when you're in a sports country, you realize that it's not just showing up to the game that matters, right? I know Vince Lombardi, and I can't believe I'm quoting him because I'm from Minnesota and we don't take too kindly to the Packers, little cheeseheads, whatever. But you know, they say 90% of you is showing up. Well, you could think that for voting if you'd like. You could think 95% is actually casting that ballot. But guess what the nuance and caveat is? The 5% that threw out your vote. Because the democracy is in the voting and the counting. And that's where we have to understand that once the power is extended, and make no mistake, the government doesn't give you rights, it's supposed to recognize that which you already have. Just as I don't delegate my joy to anyone, I don't delegate the right to have dignity in the course of my existence in the 2 more years that Dr. King had on this earth, and tracking it from that moment in time. But recognizing that we're all hip to the game, that showing up is not enough. The rules now change because you get better at participating in that which is the game of democracy. And suddenly the umpires, the refs, they begin to tighten a virtual noose and be more restrictive. Thank you, he's clapping, I hear you, yes. Yes, your Cheerios, yes. Yes. Out of the mouths of babes, out of the hands of babes, they clap. And so because of that, it's incumbent upon us to understand how to navigate that system. And how to be more than just observant, more than proactive, but participate in the very thing that was never intended to be a spectator sport. And I can tell you in all the conversations and in looking and monitoring elections throughout the South, and I mean from Mississippi up to Philadelphia, to Seattle, down to Texas, California, and everywhere around, because Jim Crow had a wingspan, and he flew. And he made deposits and legacies throughout the nation. So for every person who would say things like, well, I don't understand, do we still need to have a Section 5 formula? Do we still need to have the Voting Rights Act of 1965? The Civil Rights era is complete. And I think to myself, no, the dinosaur era is complete. I haven't seen a pterodactyl flying next to Jim Crow recently. Maybe there's a part of the world where amber is buried into, and you have little mosquitoes trapped to make fossils. That era is done. But civil rights is not an era. It's a movement. It might as well be called civil rights inertia, because things that stay in motion must stay in motion until it's stopped by an external force. And that external force, we see time and time again, is the assumption of our ignorance. The assumption that we will not do what it takes to stay the course, we will do the circuitous route of the things you've disposed and allow ourselves to be crushed because the weight of the rain of trying to get it done is too much. But in reality, when I would go around the country, people would often say things like, I don't know why you're here. I write about it in a chapter of the book. Who are you? Asking for my badge, like asking for my license. Walking past the assistants that I oversaw to ask them as if they were my supervisor a question. And wonder, why are you here, government? Aren't we past this? Can't we move on? You've got a black president now, because we're in a post-racial world. These are actual quotes I would hear on the ground. And I would say, really? Well, in this post-racial world, I was tailed from my hotel here. And in this post-racial world, so to speak, I still ended up being black. As my father says, I don't have to do anything but stay black and die. Anyone else's parents say that? Is it like they pull us aside in the black parent school and just say, hey, here's you guys have your kids one day. And so I think the phrase daddy is like death and taxes is certain. And he was like, oh, do you know things now? Oh, I think I potty trained you, so live a little longer. Right? But in this post-racial world, so to speak, people want to convince you that somehow, because we aspire and we were something on paper, we are that which we aspire to be. And don't you see those challenges? That America is and does have a constitution, but is still aspiring to be a constitutional democracy. We say we are a nation of laws, but we have a legal system aspiring to be a justice system. We're not yet there. We've got one person, one vote, we've got integrated schools, and yet de facto segregation still is the law in so many places around the world. And as they say, you know, my grandfather was a Church of God in Christ preacher. And he would often say there's no place and no time more segregated than on a Sunday morning in America. This is a man who, until the day he died, may he rest in peace, would not be alone in a room with a white woman, even at a bank, because it was ingrained in his mind the consequences of a falsehood spewed. I am the great-granddaughter of a woman who died at 106 years old. I told you it doesn't crack at Chase. She's fabulous. And I remember talking to her about the significance of the Voting Rights Act, and she still referred to herself as Negro or colored. And I say, Grandma Bessie, it's not what we're called now. And she says, you shouldn't worry about what other people call you. You should worry about what they refuse to give you. And I thought, oh, okay, I haven't lived long enough yet. Let me not teach my real elder thing. But as I would go around and I would navigate and I would see the distinction and the expectation of people, even with Section 5 still intact, the pre-clearance formula that says, because of your history of racial discrimination, you are required to get the pre-authorization of the federal government Civil Rights Division before you make any voting-related change. There was still reluctance on the faces of voters who showed up because they knew that there was a chance that the democracy and the counting of it would not account for them and their votes. And that was with Section 5 being there. Now we know Section 5 is no longer the law of the land because the Supreme Court decided that we should all move on and recalibrate the formula because there's a black president and his name was Barack Obama. And isn't that enough? And as much as we tried in that voting rights section to articulate all of the grievances and all of the reasons why it was so important to still have Section 5, and it was not an outdated formula. Time and again, it was that same notion, well, the Civil Rights era ended with the 1965 Voting Rights Act. Imagine that, civil rights ended. The conversation should be to move on. What did the Reverend Martin Luther King often speak about? When people want you to move on and you're trying to help them move beyond. And that's the work. It's the work of Sisyphus. I'm a student of Greek mythology and history. I love the analogies. I love thinking about it. I love the Mount Olympus tales. I love to Clash the Titan, the original one with Harry Hamlin. It comes on from time to time on a Saturday morning. The younger kids, you don't realize, we didn't always have on-demand television. So whatever came on at that time, whether it was Annie, The Wiz, or Clash the Titans, you watched that on Saturday. That's what you watched. Even that crazy little metal owl that you look back now and go, who was this supposed to fool? At the time, it was wonderful, and the centaur, and Medusa, and the snake hair, was a whole thing. I loved it. But one of the stories I loved more than anything, and thinking about where we are, was the story of Sisyphus. He is a man who was ordered by the gods to move a gigantic boulder up a hill time and time again. And as soon as he would get to the near top, the virtual mountaintop and could see over, that boulder would roll back down again. That was the bane of his existence. That was the calling. That was the requirement. That was what was supposed to happen. That was going to be his torture. To watch progress and be almost there, and to watch it slip right back down. And there could be many out there who say, well, you know what? Why bother? Didn't you catch on that by the second day, if not the second day, by the third day, if not the third, the fourth, the fifth, maybe the 172nd day when you couldn't get it over this awful. Look at how much you have to move. Look what you carry. Look at the weight. Look at the exercise and futility and the fool's errand. Wow, that's awful. And I feel for you. And do you see me standing on the sidelines, shaking my head and saying, there should be a better way? Do you see what I'm doing? I'm standing there looking at you. Don't you feel the empathy in action? And Sisyphus, as he watches his hard work go back down the hill and not being able to overcome that mountaintop, looks at those allies and says, I bet I could do it if we worked together. I bet maybe that was what the so-called gods were helping to achieve and understand. That the work of one becomes the work of all in a collective society. That it's not enough that it's black and brown voters who are targeted, whose votes are not counted. You can't think that if you believe in democracy, because if it happens to one, it happened to all of us. In the law, we often speak about better 1,000 guilty men go free than one innocent one go to prison. But what if people banded together to ensure that did not happen? What if Sisyphus had an ally? And more than one that looked like him and didn't look a thing like him. They didn't believe that by virtue of his appearance and who he was assigned to be in that society, how people conceived of his abilities, how people viewed his constraints, all arbitrary, by the way. What if people saw a human being in an effort to push the weight of our society up that hill? That's really the story of voting rights in this country. That's really the truth of what I always believed Dr. King spoke about it, having seen the mountaintop. Do you know what he saw? The boulder on the other side. And although he may not have gotten there with us, there were others frowning like LBJ who knew that they were going to be called to be even the most reluctant of allies. That it didn't matter about partisanship, but instead about the opportunity to elect a candidate of your choosing, not just the pretext of saying, hey, isn't it enough you showed up today? But having the real power, the power to be counted. Now I watched in Washington, D.C., where I live, I watched members of your own legislature at the state level frustrated by what was happening. Frustrated, as I'm sure we all collectively are. And go to Washington, D.C. and be the Sisyphus and say, I've got a boulder that will not leave the Lone Star State. I have pushed it up the hill. I keep pushing it up the hill. It keeps going back down. Can you help federal government? President Biden, can you be of assistance? I remember you saying something about having our backs.
Talk about it. Talk about it.
There was something. I remember every candidate that would come, Republican and Democrat alike, that would stop by the different precincts and guarantee how much they knew you were essential. Oh, I see what's been thrown upon you. I see how you in your dreams have been disposed of. I guarantee I won't allow you to be crushed. And then, just like it happens to me nearly every Friday morning when I know the garbage truck is supposed to come, I'm out running out there, waking up my husband and saying, shoot, I forgot to do it again. Really, you forgot to do it again? Because I never had the intent to take the trash out. And you watch the tail lights and they go by and you think, man, Next week I'll get my life together. I'll get it together next week. And we watch those garbage trucks of, well, the political garbage that is given to you, to all of us, pass us by. And I've watched that Texas state legislature go and sit and try to get the audience, the dignity of the audience, of those who also know the importance of one person, one vote, and it being counted. And I watched that boulder go right back down the hill. And people thought, well, I'll get to this issue. We'll talk about it soon. After all, how powerful can any legislature be? It's not as if you'll create laws that create blueprints for other states to follow that circumvent the Supreme Court's valuable precedent a few months later. It's not as if we have to address the issues of a particular state now, because don't worry, we'll get to those moments later. Sisyphus, just hang tight and wait and feel empowered by how much stronger you're getting day by day. We see those muscles, good for you. And we'll get to it. Ooh, around a midterm election. Around a presidential election. That sound good? Just keep pushing up the hill a little bit longer. Meanwhile, pretext reigns supreme. Problems or solutions in search of problems. The absence of systemic fraud, and yet different states creating laws to try to deal with that fraud. Because we all know how much a bureaucracy loves to be proactive. You never have to prod a bureaucracy to do anything. They do it all on their own. I hope you realize that I'm being sarcastic. See, all this is interconnected. It's all interconnected. There are those who believe that when they think of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., they think that he was only dealing with issues of race. And they're often surprised to know about how invested he was in realizing the intersectionality of socioeconomic status, of the absence of intergenerational wealth, of the indignity of essential work not being valued, and the correlation it has also to race. He saw the pandemic before it masked all of us. I doubt he would be surprised at the correlation of how COVID-19 and the pandemic of 16 and 19 related to one another. I doubt he'd also be surprised to know that the movement continues, but it requires movement. It requires us not resting on our laurels, waiting for somebody else to aid Sisyphus. And you know what it really requires as well? And people oftentimes, and maybe it's because my father's a dentist, but I still have a natural overbite. Makes my smile come very easily. And I'm an eternal optimist. And people have the nerve to regard that as naive. And I think, well, let me educate you and enlighten you on something. Pessimism is not progress. Optimism is not the Achilles heel of forward motion. In fact, it's required. It's about expectation and demanding what you know should come. Knowing the government did not give you rights, they're supposed to recognize them. Optimism of believing that if I stay the course, change will come. Now, staying the course does not mean, and optimism does not mean that I have a smile on my face while you smack me. Too soon? But speaking of rocks, I'm not laughing at the scenario, I'm laughing at my pun. dignity, to wait out the visceral reaction of those who feel entitled to not be offended by your commitment to truth. At times it does require you, and Dr. King knows best, to put your hands behind your back and stay the course.
All right. Yeah.
To realize that people are waiting for you to make one mistake to justify that the indignity should occur and continue for you. And it's not easy. It's not easy to be a judge. Let's just say, for example, Ketanji Brown Jackson. As an example. It's not easy to sit there at the equivalent of a Woolworth counter. And feel the indignity of milkshakes pouring down your back. It's not easy to have someone try to tear you off what they think is your pedestal, what you think you are, and get back on it. It's not easy to exercise the restraint and composure that tells you, as my Aunt Dot would say, you can survive hell if you know when you're getting out. It's not easy to sit there and realize in 3 days' time I will perhaps be called justice. And be told that there is something really wonderful about, and there is, about your composure. But to commend and laud the composure and not vilify the attack shows the imbalance where we are and the really continuation of people's expectation that someone else will carry that boulder.
That's right.
That it's enough that you're here, but not to be counted with the indignity. That I will dump as much garbage on you as humanly possible. I will rain down. I will hope it will malfunction and crush you under its weight. And if your April already had to be treated with dignity, it's still the poor people's campaign. And it's got nothing to do with money. But that is where we are as a society. And notice, I have to tell you, I don't particularly care if you're a Republican or Democrat. I kind of do. But I don't particularly care if you're Republican or Democrat or independent. What I care about is you have the opportunity to elect a candidate of your choosing to represent you. I want you to have the opportunity to see yourself in the person that stands up for you. The person who asked, we're not in Hunger Games, the person who asked for the opportunity to lead. And if you ask for the opportunity to lead, like I tell my children, if you interrupt me while I'm talking, you've asked for the opportunity to speak, so you better have something to say. Real quick. Okay? I'm kidding, my kids run me. They run me. No, big time. Are you kidding? Really? No. But if you ask for the opportunity to lead, then I want to see myself in you. And I want to know that the person who does understands that in all of at least our day, the word that was offensive in the phrase critical race theory was not critical theory. And with an eye towards that understanding how much farther we still have to go. And it might not be today that the boulder goes over the mountaintop. In fact, I assure you, today will not be the day that it goes over the mountain. But it's also not the day that you wait to see how far that person can push it. Like Arthur Ashe says, start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can. Whatever platform that might be.
That's right.
You have a responsibility because you know what? I don't know how old you all are. As I said, I'm 41. And 2 more years of King having life was given to me.
Right.
I better do something with it.
Yeah.
I'm not naive. I'm not a fool. I'm not a monolith. I'm well-read, and like I like my nails and brain, also well-read. I'll decide what to do. But don't imbue your paternalism and tell me that this is too highbrow for you to mess with. So I implore each of you, I really do, in a way where you are reaching down into your souls, into the bottom of your tired feet, and figure out what you will do with the years that you were given. With each of those days, with each of those moments, with each of those opportunities. Maybe your name is on the next ballot. I remember once, my father came home from a presidential election. And he was so sweet. My parents are my best friends. And I'm so grateful I had confessional kind of parents in that they admitted when they were wrong. They said when they didn't know what to do. They showed me who they were so that I could be. And he came home from voting and he said, "Laura, I voted for you today." I said, "For what?" He said, "I wrote your name on the ballot." I wasn't satisfied by the other candidates. I said, "Really?" He said, "I voted for, I want you to know, one person could make a difference." And in the history books, Laura Coates was voted for president one day. And he said, no matter, and it's in my dedication, I tell my children the same thing, if you are never more than you are today, for me, you were more than enough. And I tell you something, it does something to a child's mind, body, and soul.
That's right.
To know that there was agency, and there was an opportunity, and that somebody saw something within him or her to believe that you could lead. And it wasn't because he in any way thought I was prepared to be in the Oval Office. It was because he wanted to make sure he understood that in that moment, at any moment, we could all be called to push a boulder. And somebody believed you could move it. So look around and look within. And don't feel tired. Don't feel exhausted. That is the temptation. That is the goal of those who try to crush you. They want you to feel tired. They want you to give up. They want you to throw up their hands and think, well, it's just too much. Today's not my day. Maybe somebody else will do the right thing. And since I alluded to him, I will do one of my favorite Will Smith quotes. He does this video and he said, there are two things that you should know about me. He said, I'm competitive to a fault. He said, if we're running side by side on a treadmill, he said, two things will be true. Either I will outrun you and outlast you, or I will die trying. Let that be true for us. That when someone's next to you trying to outpace your passion, your drive, your ambition that you know to be, let two things be true. That you will outrun them, or be willing to die trying. Because if you are not, our children will remain on the hamster wheel, wondering why they've gone nowhere, and fast. I want to take this last opportunity, and I see the children in the room, and I'd love for you to stand up for a moment. Stand up. Take the earbuds out too. I feel the same way. What? I want you to look at these children. What is your name, sweetheart? Elena? Elena. How old are you? 16. Elena is a beautiful 16-year-old child. You will move a boulder one day. Shakespeare once said, let her sleep, for today and tomorrow she will move mountains. And I believe that in you. And I really hope you realize that every person in this room thinks of you as their child and ours. And we will honor you and move it with you. What's your name, sweetheart? What is it? Avery. How old are you, Avery? 16. You have twins? Oh my God, we're the parents of God. You're the mom? Okay, well, it doesn't chafe in Texas. In Minnesota, it's cold. We get older faster. Avery, we believe in you. We think that you are a substantial and honorable and respectable and respect-worthy young man. And I am so proud to look at your composure and your poise. I see in your eyes a great man who will move a boulder. And every person in this room will help you. And if you don't see them side by side, know that we are putting ourselves within and vicariously helping you do that. Good luck to you, son. What is it? Rashawn, how old are you?
16.
I was like, what was happening 16 years ago? Everyone 16? Was it? Oh, Fiesta weekend. I get it. Rashawn? Krishan. Okay, see? You know what? I respect the insistence that you be called by your name. And you insist on being respected as him. And you're willing to correct those who misconstrue the man you are. And that is a quality you should never lose. Because the rest of all of our lives, people will tell us who we are. And you have to correct them and show them who you are. I'm proud of you. What is it? Darian. Is Darian Jr.? No, you're Darrell.
I'm Daryl.
Daryl, see, I almost got it.
And he's Daryl.
Daryl. Darren. All right. I mean, you're far away, I can't hear it. Darren, I had the pleasure of being at your table and watching you and your father interact. So I already know that you will walk in the footsteps of a giant. But I also know that those don't have to be your footsteps. Because I have a feeling that you are a visionary who will see well beyond even the limitations of the generation above you. Something about you tells me that you are somebody and a force to be reckoned with. There is a quiet strength about him, a quiet power. And today you might be shy and reserved, but don't mistake Darren for somebody who will blend into the wallpaper. I see you nodding your head, and I believe in you. I see it. What's your name? Joshua. You know what I noticed about you at the table? I noticed that you didn't lose focus on what you wanted to do. I can't tell you how much of an asset that will be in your life. To know the course that you want to take and for you to take it and follow it will be the most beautiful thing we will all see. I see the way that you hold your head, and your chin, if you notice, is always raised with Joshua. It's always raised. Don't lower it for anyone. Don't think that it makes you seem humble. The trick for humility is not to think less of yourself, but to think about yourself less. And I have a feeling with the parents I've met that you already have your head straight, your chin up to what you know is on that mountaintop, and for all of us, we'll help you move that boulder. I love my children. Oh wait, one more, yes. What's your name? Anaya? How old are you, Anaya? 17. Anaya, you know what? Does not need a microphone. That's a beautiful thing. I love the strength and the depth of your voice, and I know it's more than just the actual. It is the symbolic. It is the symbolism of standing up, and she raised her hand to be counted. Yes. Do not forget about me. Yes. And there is something that all Black women in this audience already know, that oftentimes we have to raise our hands very high and say, wait a minute, don't forget about me. And I can already see with your beautiful shoulders exposed that you probably had the weight on them, or you will in the future, as we all have. But I have a feeling that you will stand up to be counted, and you will ensure that others who find themselves where you are wanting to have the strength of your voice, that you will be their voice. And you will, as they say, nobody puts baby in the corner. Someone's pointing. Oh, he said sit down. He's like, no, I said sit down. Well, I just want to take a moment and thank you all for inviting me to be here. I really do mean from the bottom of my soul how honored I am to be among my family. That's how I see us all. That's how I rejoice in this moment. But as family, let's give each other the tough love to know that we've got work to do. And if you see me carrying a boulder, if I see you trying to push one, if we see ourselves doing that, an ally doesn't stand by. You roll up your sleeves, mine are gold and black, for the alphas. You roll up your sleeves and you get there with them. Otherwise, we'll always be waiting to see the mountaintop. Thank you.
And the Lambda chapter, Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. It's supposed to be just thank you for that fantastic message of inspiration. And you just wanted to let you know that you always have a home here in San Antonio. And we hope that you will be more than a tourist. You will come back and visit because you are family. And so we just wanted to give you this little token of our appreciation.
Oh, isn't that lovely?
Just give you this little token of our appreciation for your outstanding inspirational speech.
Oh, look at that.
Okay, and again, we want to wish you and your family continued success and blessings as you go forward. Okay.
At this time, we would like to bring up Jabari Akins to do a memorial for his father, who was chair of the After Educational Fund. But we want to give him and his family. Could his family please stand for a minute? Can we give him a hand, please?
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. As Brother Williams just said, my name is Jordan Aiken. I am the current chapter president for the Epsilon Sigma chapter, seated here at UTSA here in San Antonio, Texas. As you all know, my father recently passed after a 6-month battle with pancreatic cancer. He was the chairman for the AEF. And this was, a lot of his vision. Today was something that he definitely saw, and it's beautiful to see everybody here. And so I want to just, everybody give yourselves a round of applause for being here. All of the today. Thank you all so much. You all can read the nice memoriam that was written on my father's life, but that's only a minor glimpse, really, of what he stood for. All of the brothers here know, everybody who knew him well knew that that's only a minor glimpse of really what he stood for. My father dedicated his life to service and love. Love, unconditional love, he would always say, can move mountains. My father believed that love that had conditions was not love at all. If the love that God had for us had conditions, how many of us would be able to say, Jesus loves me? We wouldn't. Because none of us live up to that standard of love, where if we put conditions on it, we would still be able to say that even our Father in heaven would love us. But that's what makes what is The technical term for it is agape. That's what makes agape love so beautiful and so special, is that even without conditions, no matter how ugly it may look, no matter how ugly it may seem, you still love somebody in spite of. And I think that's something that not only my father stood for, that Brother Dr. Martin Luther King stood for as well. That's what helped to push along the civil rights movement. That's what keeps alive the vision that we all live by today, and that we're all able to share in today. My father was a man who aimed, as I said, to love unconditionally. To fight for civil rights in the African American community requires unwavering love and hope. His visionary spirit, tough love, and continued compassion and passion imparted to me and my siblings will continue to live on. The passion he held for Alpha, even in spite of fighting pancreatic cancer, the passion that he held for his fraternity, for his brotherhood, for his community, will continue to, I pray to live on in me. And I pray to live a life as he did, and that is one that is dedicated to manly deeds, scholarship, and genuine love for all mankind, and especially service to my brotherhood. Onward and upward, 06.
This is a scholarship breakfast. Your support goes towards our efforts. I'd like to call forward Brother Carl Nicholas, who is the chair of our scholarship committee of the Alpha Educational Foundation. And we, consistent with Brother Aiken's wish, we wish to award a scholarship from, as the program indicates, to Mr. Jelani Hughes. And bring the scholarship committee, Mr. Hughes.
Mr. Hughes, are you here? Very good. Like Brother Harry said, Brother Aiken's goal is to have our first MLK scholarship. So I would like to congratulate Mr. Deshaun Hughes to be our first. I'm going to present him with a certificate, and it says, congratulations. Alpha Educational Fund of San Antonio, Delta Rho Lambda Chapter, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. Awards Jelani Deshaun Hughes the first annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Breakfast Scholarship for his academic excellence and scholarly pursuits, given on the second day of April 2022. Your efforts are indicative of the future of our youth and the achievement of your future goals. Signed by Brother Billy Williams, Chairman of the AEF, and Brother Dr. Philip Parker, President of Delta Rho Lambda. Mr. Hughes will receive a $2,500 scholarship.
All right, taking two. 1, 2, 3. I'll take one more. 1, 2, 3.
For clarity of the record, it is the first time we've done it at this event. The bulk of our work happens at the end of the year, where we're targeting 4 more students at the end of the year. Those applications are being evaluated by Brother Nicholas and his committee now. But the importance here is that this is targeted to Sam Houston High School, the lone remaining high school in District 2 here, historically part of the pride of the east side of San Antonio. And we want to make that a focus of this event going forward. So again, we thank you in advance for your ongoing and continued support. At this time, I'd like to bring forward our chapter president again, Brother Parker, for his closing remarks. We will then be led through two verses of Lift Every Voice and Sing by the lovely Miss Anaya Armand. And following that, Father Frowls of Holy Redeemer will bring us to our benediction. And then, pursuing that, we would ask if all who would exit to the right, while we rearrange the room to take a few pictures with our guest of honor for the Brothers of Alpha. And then she will be available outside in the hallway to memorize your books and your purchases. That's the vision for the next, hopefully, 15 or so minutes.
Right, according to your message, that was very inspiring today. And everybody at the sound of my voice today, vote. That is the best gift you can give your communities. And before we start, and I was reminded today, but I told Brother Middleton, I have to wait and see how this event goes today. And I can tell you, it was a very successful event. Thank you for that. So again, I have a few people to recognize. All my distinguished brothers of Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, please stand and acknowledge, because without them, this event would not have been a success. Recognize my good family over there in the corner. Cynthia, Ebony, Jabari, please stand up. Hey, your husband, your father want to take this event to the next level. And I can tell you today, he did that. As we say, we award our first scholarship today at this event of $2,500. That was because of your husband and your father. So thank you for being here. We want you to be a part of that vision as we go forward. Thank you for coming today. All of you for coming today. We're about to prepare to sing the National Negro Hymn. See you next year, and thank you all for coming out today.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I would like to thank the Brothers of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated for allowing me to play for you today. I will be playing the first two verses of Lift Every Voice. And yeah, please everybody sing along.
always hard to be the last person before you get to leave, because I know you're anxious and you don't leave up what you have to do. So I'll do something short. Loving God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this time together after a time when we've not been able to be with one another, to hug, to share, to kiss, and to truly be present to one another. We thank you, Lord, that you are always present to us and always with us. We thank you for the men of Alpha Phi Alpha. We thank you for the many ways that they lift up, that they give hope, that they stand for what is right and what is true. Help us always to live and to walk in the light of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. Let us continue to keep his dream alive, for truly he was a man of God, and he always sought your way and your will in everything that he did. Help us to do likewise. Help us in our travels home. Keep us safe. May we always trust in you, Lord, in your presence and your abiding love. We make this prayer through Christ our Lord. Amen.
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I would ask our guests, for the men of Alpha, all Alphas, if you will remain in the room. I ask our guests to give us leave as we rearrange to take some photographs to commemorate. As we adjourn, I will simply say, we will see you all in January of 2023. We are adjourned.